All right, as I mentioned, we have a special guest on the show today, Tucker Adamson with Virginia Slate. So Tucker, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, we connected on LinkedIn, and I'm really looking forward to this interview because you are an expert when it comes to slate roofing. And I know there's a lot of general contractors out there that would like to sell slate on more jobs or get into more affluent neighborhoods and sell slate because of a lot of reasons that we're going to get into. But before we get into all of that, I'd kind of like to just give you a chance to share your background in the industry and then what you do today for Virginia Slate.
Perfect. So slate roofing has been around for, hundreds of years. We started with our company, started about 50 years ago with a quarry in Buckingham County. I've been working for the company probably about 17 years, doing all sorts of different jobs. We sell slate that comes out of Buckingham, but we've also diversified. We sell slate. We have quarries up in Vermont. Vermont's going to give you any of the colorful slates, the reds, the greens, the grays, the blacks. We also import in slate from Spain as well. Spain accounts for 9 out of every 10 roofing slates currently installed in the world. So, and that's because of Europe's desire and consumption for natural slate. They don't use asphalt shingles, so they typically only use hard roofing products. So hence why Spain provides so much of the roofing slate for the world.
Wow, did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed also, you mentioned the history of slate is kind of interesting. It's something I didn't really think about.
Yeah, so slate started back in, they've traced it hundreds and hundreds of years back. They used it for sheltering stone. They started realizing that it could split thin. If you go over to Spain and some of the hillsides, you'll see these little communities with just slabs of stone on their roof that are overlapping. So that was the beginning, and these little houses are still there. And they, thousands of pounds on the roof and holding up and protecting everything inside. It wasn't until later on that they started cutting it into more uniform and allowing it to be more of a uniform shape, more the rectangular with a triple overlapping system. That came about from Europe. I would say England kind of started that. And then they also started using it as ballast coming over in the ships. So when the New World was founded over here, they would put the slate in the bellies of the ship and bring it over, and it helped with the stabilization of the ship. And they found slates in Jamestown that came from England. So that's what they were able to use for some of the early buildings in New America. So down in Charleston, you'll see a lot of Welsh slate, Jamestown, all the way up and down the East Coast. It was about in the, I want to say 1700s that they discovered slate deposits in Buckingham, Virginia. They started quarrying those, which is a beautiful hard slate. They also found slate deposits up in Vermont, Pennsylvania as well. Those started to be excavated, quarried. The Vermont, again, is where you're going to get all your colorful slates. And it's a little bit of a softer stone compared to what the Buckingham slate is.
That is so interesting. And in Virginia, it's like we discussed, that's my home state as well. I mean, just such a beautiful place. So it doesn't surprise me that something beautiful is coming out of places like Virginia and Vermont and Spain. But I know there's some people listening to this and they're, I want to address the elephant in the room. Some people listen to this and they're saying, well, yeah, slate would be nice, but I'm used to selling asphalt shingles all day long and I can just sell that. So let's talk about some of the unique selling points of slate. Why would somebody want to learn about slate, start trying to sell slate, offer it to their customers? Let's get into the main points of that.
Absolutely. So I talk to contractors, homeowners, roofers every day about this exact same question about, well, it's so expensive. Why would I do it? It's so this, it's that. If you really look at it, slate is expensive. It's one of the most expensive roofing products, but it's going to last 3 to 4 times the length of any other roof. So you tell somebody who's building a $2 million house where you're going to put a cheap roof on and you're going to have to re-roof it when they're putting $500,000 into the kitchen and they're going to make the roof the cheapest thing possible. It doesn't make sense. The roof is what's going to protect everything in the house. A slate roof is obviously, it's proven its value. It's proven its longevity. There's several products that come out, on a yearly basis that are synthetic slates, or it's this type of slate, or it's this type of asphalt shingle that's the new and latest and baddest. Slate roofing, you go to Europe and the cathedrals and the homes, they're all slate, and the longevity is based on what is the first layer of defense, and that's going to be your roof. So we are constantly on the phone with, because it is, there are not very many slate roofs that are actually put on. We're constantly trying to let people know the absolute value to it. It is going to be more expensive. It is going to be probably about 4 to 5 times the cost of asphalt shingles. But in the long run, if you amortize it out over the length of the roof, it's worth it. Especially when you're talking about a church, a university, a house that's going to be over $1 million house. Why would your first line of defense, why would you skimp on that one?
Well, and something that comes to my mind with this is, in Texas, we had the new House bill passed that says you can't eat your client's deductible. And so some people are scrambling going, oh my gosh, how are we going to sell? It's going to be a race to the bottom and all that stuff. And I flip it and I turn it the other way. And as I'm educating the customer on, here's what we're going to do. Here's a scope of work. Here's how we're going to build our estimate. And by the way, there's a lot of contractors that, even though this House bill is passed, they're still going to figure out ways to eat your deductible. By the way, that's a crime that you can be penalized and go on a criminal record. You don't have to worry about that with us. So I flip it and use it as a selling technique. And I think about the same thing with Slate and a nice product. Like you said, if it's a $2 or $3 million home, you should definitely give that as an option to your customer and never sell out of your own pocket. It might be expensive to you, but it's probably not expensive to them if they're buying that kind of a home. And I learned that years ago, selling suits at the Men's Warehouse. Years ago. And one of the things that their training was phenomenal. And they said, don't ever sell out of your own pocket. And when a customer walks in, don't hesitate to show them the Valentino suit. So you know what I did? I started showing people 2 options. I'd get their sizes and then I'd take them over and I'd say, here's a suit that'll fit you. This one's, and I wouldn't even mention price. I'd say, here's this one. It's typically a $300 suit, but this one also fits you. And here's some of the differences. This is a $2,000 suit. And so many times I had customers go, I'll take that one. And when they walked in, I never would have thought they'd buy a suit like that, but I was selling out of my own pocket. To me at the time, a $2,000 suit was expensive. Right. So I feel like it's a similar principle with this.
Absolutely. And it's when you go into a car dealership and you walk in, you don't see the, basic, sedan sitting in the dealership showroom. You see the Corvette that everyone wants to go look at. So make sure your customers, as a roofer, make sure you're a GC, make sure your customers know that you're capable of doing a slate roof. Constantly, I'd also advise our clients on how to problem solve. If they hit, an area on a slate roof that they don't know how to do a detail, we work with them. We do photographs, we do videos and send them back to them. Because it's not, slate's installed with 2 copper nails. It's a natural rock that comes out of the ground that's hand split. It's actually still hand split all over the world the same way with a hammer and chisel. And then it's cut to size. So, and then on the roof, the underlayment goes down and then it's installed with 2 copper nails or stainless steel nails. That's the traditional way of doing it. So there isn't a lot of paper, of adhesives or anything like that to drip out or to go wrong. So,
well, let me ask you this. So for somebody like, let's say you've got a general contractor they're very comfortable selling roofs, but they want to get more into, they've got a couple of customers in more affluent neighborhoods and they want to sell a slate roof, but they've never done that before. What specific resources do you have that would help educate or train them on that?
So slate sells itself. And this is what we try and let people know is 9 out of 10 times, if I can put an actual piece of slate into a client's hands, they go with the slate roof. If they can feel that value, they can feel the strength of it. And especially if it's a piece of plastic, if they're looking at a synthetic slate roof and thinking, oh, well, this will be just as good. If you can put them both in the same hands, they go, you're right, this feels better. And typically the cost difference, especially versus synthetic, is not much at all. And a lot of times I've seen it as this coming in at the same price for fully installed. So what we do is have the roofers, the GCs, even the homeowners will call us and request samples. We send them out all the time. We get that into their hands. We let them see the colors. We let them see, we tell them to drive around, find a house that they really like and say, what's on that roof? And we'll, they'll take a cell phone picture and send it to me. And I'll say, oh, that's a Vermont gray green mixed with some, unfading purple. And so then we can build a portfolio from there of what they're looking for. But starting the dialogue and getting them to at least just look at the product and again, feel it and and educate themselves a little bit more on it. Unfortunately, the slate industry is small compared to the synthetic market or even the asphalt shingle market. So there isn't a lot of great information. They just hear that it's expensive, but they don't really know how expensive it is. Is it, 100 times the cost, or is it 5 times the cost? And typically it's not out of reach for most of these homes.
And so let's talk about that. I know that's something you mentioned was the difference between natural slate and synthetic. That I'm guarantee there's a lot of people listening to this that may not know the difference in experience, either installing it or selling it. So let's break the differences down.
Absolutely. So synthetic, the value, added is it is a lighter weight product. It is a plastic, typically plastic or rubbers. With a lighter weight product, it is, your structure doesn't have to be as strong, but, there's no way to completely quantify this, but if you could, when we get some of these wind uplifts, especially here in Virginia, we get them where the tornadoes come through or just strong winds, having that density on the roof to hold the whole structure down as opposed to that blowing. So there is a value to have a nice weight to the roof, whether it's visual or in this case, physical as well. So that's one of the main differences, is it? Again, slate has proven its value. Slate's been around, natural slate. I mean, there are homes all over Virginia, and up and down the East Coast, especially since it's so old, that are 200 years old and had been put down with red rosin paper and are still going strong. The roof might have, some of the metal valleys might have come apart, but that's about it. So, we try and make sure people understand slate's done the work. Slate's proven itself. Slate you do have to hand install it with a hammer and nail, but I know a lot of roofers that I've worked with that are, when they're doing synthetic installations, they're also doing a hammer and nail, and they're curling the slates or the synthetics because they're worried about them pinching and curling up later. So again, you technically can put synthetic on with an air gun, but a lot of people are doing hand and nail. So then there's the same thing too. It's mainly letting people know that the product is available. A lot of times they'll say, oh, well, we can't get the material in a timely fashion and we can get this, synthetic delivered to us right away. Our company we keep anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 squares in stock at any one time so that we can meet those demands, so that that doesn't become an excuse. We found that too many times if you say, if a roofer comes onto a job and says, hey, I can get to your roof, but I can't get the material, it's going to be, 8 weeks, then they're going to go with something else because they're going to want to push the job forward. So we try and keep a large inventory so that we can meet some of those demands.
When I think about that too, though, going back to the selling point, I'm sure that the natural slate lasts longer and is more durable than the synthetic. But for me, if I was selling, going back to the type of customer that you're selling to, we see slate roofs here in Dallas and Highland Park and in Preston Hollow and Park Cities and all these neighborhoods where the home value is higher. And for me, if I'm selling to that customer, I would say, well, it's up to you. If you want a faux slate, right, or a real slate, it's just kind of up to you, because there's faux marble countertops, all that kind of stuff. But people in those neighborhoods, a lot of people in those neighborhoods, they update their furniture every few years just to change the look. They update their paint. They have multiple homes. They have many of them have multiple income streams. So it's just a different ball game. And I think that mental block would be a big barrier for a lot of people that are not used to selling slate, getting into selling slate.
And your roof is at least a third of your visual plane. And so if they're gonna, sell the best and then drop them down, push the Ferrari on them, push this, let's try a natural slate roof. Let's, at least give them that option, because then if they drop down later, at least you tried to sell them the best, get them on that top rung and see if you can get them to bite on it.
So what would be, I know we talked about reasons why a roofer would want to sell slate. We talked about profitability. We talked about how it's a good selling point for the homeowner. And we talked about using it really as a technique to get into more affluent neighborhoods. So let's discuss those 3 points.
So it is, anytime you see a listing, real estate listing, oh, it's a brick and slate. Oh, they're going to point it out. It's like saying, oh, it's a 67 Ferrari. That is a huge, wow, that's real slate. And we've done houses where the one house is slate and the two neighbors decide, you're right, that does look better, and they want to go with slate. So again, it's that repeat customers that you end up getting along the way, and trying to fill those in.
And what about profitability? Because you mentioned at the outset, it is a more expensive product, but how does that alter the contractor's profit margins?
Absolutely. And this is a huge thing. So slate, if you can align yourself with the ability to do slate, do it well. It is a laborious job to install it. But on the flip side, there are not a lot of people who know how to do it and to do it well. So if you look in your average city, most roofers know how to do asphalt shingles. Out of 100% of roofers, I would say 50 of them can do, or 50% can do metal roofing, right? And out of the 100%, maybe only 10% can do slate roofing. So again, you're putting yourself into an elite class of, there are only a couple of people in town that know how to do it and do it well. So it takes a lot longer. Typically what my roofers will tell me is one roofer can do a square of slate per day. But you don't have the competition in it. You don't have the people, underbidding it, that aren't running, that are doing something a little bit shady, or, kind of a Ponzi scheme where they're buying the materials for this job, but putting them on this job. So with the slate, it's going to take you longer, it's going to be longer, load in, load out, all of that, but there are not as many people doing it. So the competition, you've got a lot more profitability in there because they don't have the competition on it.
Yep, I like it. It's something we've talked a lot about it. Rain Tight General Contracting is getting more, we just did a couple of jobs in a more affluent neighborhood here recently, and we're just talking about how to really get more focused on that, just because, like you just said, just a little bit less competition, and there's ways that you can stand out from the crowd with customer service and branding and process and all that stuff. Things that these, customers in these more affluent neighborhoods pay attention to. So, well, let's talk about this. Let's say you've got a re-roof job. It's an asphalt shingle, but you think the customer would be interested in slate. What are the changes that have to take place to account for the weight change and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So slate runs anywhere from 800 to 1,000 pounds per square or 10 by 10 area. Whereas asphalt shingles, I'm not even sure, probably only like 150 pounds. So there is a tremendous amount. We actually just worked with a roofer and finished up a job where he took off asphalt shingles and went back with metal and slate. The lower slopes he ended up doing with kind of our less pitch he did with some of the metal, and went with slate. And he said that, when he got onto the structure, the trusses were actually set. You want to make sure the distance in between the trusses can hold the weight, and you want to make sure that the thickness of the trusses can hold the weight. Then it goes to the decking. You can put it on with a thinner decking board, if it's a 1/2 inch decking, but you typically want to go up to 3/4 inch decking. That just helps with the bounce. When you're actually hammering it on and you go with a thinner decking board, it can be done, but it'll just beat you to death with all the bounce.
Gotcha.
So it isn't, a lot of people in the industry, synthetic industry, will say, oh, it's going to cost you a lot of money to upgrade your system to accommodate the slate, but it really doesn't. What we've seen from our roofers is, it's very minimal on, to up their loads.
Which goes back to, if you can afford a slate roof, you can afford some line items on there to build up the structure if you need to, right?
Especially if you're doing it. I mean, and, we're looking at the green building, and we're looking at how we're going to leave our footprint, and we're looking at, longevity of people. When they build a house, we typically don't build a house, to just flip it and turn it around. You want it that's gonna, hey, I really did this and I did it well. So, slate is an organic roofing product. I mean, it's the only organic roofing product that there is, where you could take it off the roof and throw it into, any of your natural rivers. You could throw it into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and they can't say anything about it. There are no additives to it. There's nothing. So a lot of times you have people, and you can use it as a selling point. We do it all the time where, homeowners are thrilled to go to Whole Foods and pay 3 times more, for their apples, why wouldn't they pay 3 times more for their roof, if it's organic? So again, we encourage our roofers to mention that. I mean, it's a great product for that fact alone. I mean, you see it on tables at fine dining restaurants where they're using it for cheese platters. And it's the same thing going on the roof. So it's not shedding oils. It's not shedding into the water streams. It's not shedding, any of that, the aggregates or the chemicals. It's just a natural rock.
So, which is great. I mean, it's just another selling point. So let's say you've got a situation where you want to talk to the customer about Slate. We reach out to you, you send the examples, show the customer, and they're like, okay, I want this. What's the turnaround time? I mean, do people have to go straight to you guys? Can they buy it from a local ABC supply
We go through
company?
distribution. We sell through distribution. They can come to me. I'm not going to give terms to somebody. So a lot of the times the distribution is a great factor because they can get terms through their local supply house. Sometimes people, want to come to me because they want that personal attention. We usually, I've had people call me with an emergency and go, hey, my homeowner, they had looked at Slate, they had backed off and they'd gone with asphalt shingle and we're getting ready to put it on. And we put on 2 squares of asphalt shingles and they changed their mind and they need Slate now. And I've had to ship out 3 tractor trailer loads of Slate within 2 days, and we can do it. Again, that's what that large in-stock inventory helps us do. It might not be the exact size or the exact, but it's going to be a Slate roof in a very close. It might not be an 1810. It might be a 2010, but it's going to be close. So we go through those different channels. Also distribution helps with offloading. It comes on tractor trailers. Typically about 50 squares of Slate standard thickness will fit on a tractor trailer. So we ship it all over the country, daily, up and down, California. We've been as far out that way, all around.
And so you guys are pretty nimble when it comes to distribution. And
we are, and we line all that up for distribution. We've even had our distribution guys who don't know a lot about Slate, because it is a specialty product. It is a kind of everyone's heard of what it is, but they don't know exactly how it works. So we work with distribution and educating them and making sure if they have a spec of how to read it and how to see it and go from there.
Gotcha. Well, I know you could talk about Slate for days, but I think we've covered some great points. We've talked about the visual effects it has, the durability, the longevity, the profitability. We've talked about some selling points for the homeowner, reasons why a homeowner would want to buy it, the kind of target audience you're dealing with. What would be a parting piece of advice for contractors listening to this and they haven't worked with Slate yet?
My thing is, do a little bit of research. You can do some quick research with it. There's some great resources out there on what it exactly is. Call, request a sample just to have, a brochure just to have, so you have the option to upsell it. It's not an incredibly difficult material to work with. It's not like you have to mix something to have this, to have that. If you don't get it exactly right, it's gonna, it takes attention to detail. It takes time to lay out, but it's worth it in the end. And it's going to get more interest from other people. Oh, if he can do Slate, if that roofer can do Slate, he can do anything. So that's what we do. Plenty of training. Call me for training. I'm happy to help. Like I said, even if it's a small detail, if it's layout, if it's takeoffs, we do all that type of thing.
Awesome. Well, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
They're welcome to call us directly. Our phone number is 804-745-4100. And I'm also happy to give you my email address. They're welcome to send me emails. We respond very quickly. Our whole goal is to make sure that people understand Slate and that customers understand Slate so that they have that option. As of right now, people, oh, it's just too expensive, I couldn't afford it. Well, it's not. And I think people need to see that it's, they'll be pleasantly surprised when they say, oh, it's not that bad. So.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Tucker Adamson with Virginia Slate, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Have a great day.